Welcome to Between Two Molars, an open conversation of the wins, setbacks, and messy middle of business ownership. A new kind of podcast that pulls back the curtain. No fluff, real conversations, real lessons, and the real life of running an orthodontic practice. So sit back between two molars and let's get into it. Welcome back to Between Two Molars, the space where real orthodontic conversations happen.
I'm Diana Weaver.
And I'm Michelle Shimmin. Together, we're diving into the real-life challenges, wins, and wisdom from inside orthodontic practices.
So grab your coffee and get comfortable. Let's talk Between Two Molars.
I mean, let's be real. If it's Friday, it might be wine.
Well,
grab your wine.
This is true. Okay, so maybe next take I'll do that.
There you go.
or maybe just a cocktail. Yeah. Who knows?
Whatever your preference might be, we're just happy to have you here. And this has been an interesting week for us, as Diana and I were talking about what we wanted to bring to the surface, put out on the table, and share with you. Communication was very consistent throughout our week's coaching this week, and we really wanted to talk about the hidden cost of poor communication within the practice, and probably one of the most dramatic areas that we see in nearly every office is really the silos that are created between the different roles in the practice. You know, you've got your clinical team, you've got your administrative team, and then you typically kind of have your financial treatment coordinator team.
And they all think that they all work harder or differently than the other.
Everybody works harder than the other person.
Right.
So we do talk a lot about empathy, and this is a great space to really recognize that empathy is really valuable and really important in this, because every person on the team is working really hard. So when we can put ourselves in our team members' shoes and recognize everybody's working hard, we do want to be able to realize how can we make it more efficient, of course, for everybody in their role, but how can we minimize the breakdown in communication in practices, because it's really toxic for practices. It sabotages the culture, and ultimately, I don't know if anybody could say anything to change my mind on this, but I feel that poor culture is the number one reflection of bad practice, unsuccessful practice. I'm losing my words here, but a practice that is not thriving, that isn't as successful, and is not firing on all cylinders. I think culture is the common denominator with that. And it's undervalued so much of the time. Communication.
The communication. It all goes back to communication. Mm-hmm. Are we being impeccable with our words? Are we really putting ourselves in the shoes of the other person that we're talking to?
The four agreements.
So we talk about those a lot. So as far as communication goes, miscommunication can be a pretty big culture killer. And how do we alleviate some of those miscommunication broken links of communication?
Yeah, I think that miscommunication absolutely kills efficiency, which is a cost to the practice and to the doctor, and trust. And if you don't have trust within the practice, you're not going to have team members that are going to be accountable. So this is something that doctors are going to feel if they are feeling more than just the inner office, dissension. Then it's going to end up costing their practice a significant amount of money in that area. And there's simple solutions.
So let's talk about some of those solutions. I can think of one big area that's really easy to implement and can be a stumbling block on a lot of different levels. That morning huddle is key to the trickle-down effect of what miscommunication can, evolve into throughout the day.
Well, and I think the morning huddle, most often than not, is misused as well. How many times do we observe a morning huddle where more than half the team is checked out, or they're not listening to it?
Or we're just reviewing the actual patients on the schedule that, let's be honest, I can read myself.
Yeah. I don't need to sit and listen to somebody.
I don't need to sit and listen to say, I have these. What I need is I really need intention and purpose behind what is this actually giving to me?
And how does it affect you in your day that day? And this is a perfect example of where the morning huddle should be designed and created to bridge communication between the different areas of the practice, and how our patient day and the landscape is going to affect each role in the practice. For instance, I can't tell you how many times I've observed patients oftentimes with very expensive appliances, leave the office without paying for it. And, the clinicians will be efficient in bringing the patient back, completing the procedure, and then dismissing the patient. But the scheduling team's on the phone and doesn't catch the patient. The patient leaves and says, I'll call them. There's just a lot of hiccups and broken lines of passing that baton, if you will. And so that morning huddle should be identifying those, and more importantly, identifying the person that's going to be taking the baton each time.
And that's key. That's that accountability piece and that ownership element of what this morning huddle is.
This might seem like a small piece to the day. It might seem like a small piece to a financial mishap, but it compounds, and it can compound pretty quickly. So really the areas that is beneficial. One, it helps, I feel, efficiency clinically in the clinicians talking with the doctor about any areas where the doctor is going to need to be focused, maybe a patient specifically over completion, significantly over completion dates, maybe patient's non-compliant.
Yeah, this one, little Diana Weaver, she comes in with broken brackets all the time. How's that going to impact the schedule?
And where any bottlenecks in the schedule might be. I'm going to add to that a really important piece that I encourage to talk about with the doctors in the huddle is where there's going to be a strong, heavy bottleneck in our landscape for the day, and to be aware not to add on additional parts of a procedure that aren't scheduled.
So in the spirit of talking ownership, who owns that part of the morning huddle?
Great question. Personally, I feel that the clinical lead and the scheduling team should both be in dialogue at that time with the schedule. The scheduling team knows that schedule. They know where the bottlenecks are and are going to be. But the clinical lead should know the clinical team, the movement of the doctor, the timing of that, and can also provide a lot of insight. So that's a dialogue and interaction together.
And that team is vital because what looks good on paper might not be actual in real life.
Right.
We experience that.
So that is important. There needs to be trust with that as well. If the clinical lead is recommending that the doctor not add on additional parts of a procedure that aren't currently scheduled, we need to trust that there's a reason for that, and know that just because we think we're serving the patient in our chair right now and we don't want them to have to come back for an added procedure doesn't mean that we are truly serving the adjacent patients. If a patient comes in late and they have broken brackets, just because we're going to think we're being patient-centered and serving that patient who's non-compliant,
right,
then we have to recognize, are we interfering with being patient-centered to those adjacent patients?
The ones that are coming in on time with nothing broken.
No broken brackets.
So we don't want to punish those patients.
Correct.
In that process. You know what I think is also a great partnership? As a former treatment coordinator, I know that the TC and the clinical lead, when we get a start, how are we going to get that start on the schedule and ready to go that same day? Yeah.
Now, you're spot on with that. And it's also the treatment coordinator being able to understand and know when they're reporting on their new patients, who is going to be able to start ahead of time. Do we have dental clearance? Are we going to be seeing Michelle, who hasn't been into the dentist in 9 months, and last time she was in, she had a pending crown?
Gross, Michelle. Why get into the dentist?
Not true. But right, or that's somebody that I know that I'm not going to get them started today. Correct. So that's not something that I have to coordinate necessarily with, or I'm coordinating with the clinical lead that we're not going to be getting that individual started. So,
or maybe when we're doing our welcome calls as a TC, I called and introduced, because let's be real, let's not call to confirm.
No.
We call to get excited, and this is what we're going to do tomorrow.
Ourselves.
And I'm going to introduce myself, and we're so looking forward to seeing Diana at this time.
Yeah.
And what's that reaction and response from the patient? Oh, we're so excited. We've been looking forward to this. It's been months since we needed to get in and do this. So that's something that we need clear communication from the treatment coordinator on.
I'm going to add my really strong script to this piece of it.
Tell us.
Don't call, like you just said, treatment coordinator 24 to 48 hours. always should be calling the new patients. And they're not calling to confirm the appointment, although that's what they are doing, in fact.
Correct.
But when you call to confirm an appointment, you're expecting the patient to no-show or to cancel. We are calling to introduce ourselves, to build value for the time that you've blocked out with the doctor, and to lay the foundation for that same day start. And you do that by saying, we have reserved 45 minutes for your appointment. Dr. Orthodontist is very excited to meet with you. And if Dr. Orthodontist prescribes treatment at this time, we will combine as many appointments as possible to save you additional trips in.
That's perfect.
That is a really great segue to prepare that patient for our proceeding with the next appointment that doctor's prescribing for. So those are really, really great reminders in each role in how we can be clear and set up our schedule with that effective communication. And it does start with that morning huddle. I wanted to share something also about morning huddles because I was recently in a morning huddle. And it was humbling for me in this morning huddle, but it also shifted my thought process because I look for any opportunity I can to liven the morning huddles up, right? And we've all been a part of or heard of or seen different ways that practices do this. But this particular one, they had really great reporting that individuals reported on, which is important for that engagement. But at the end of it, without saying anything, everybody just started going around the circle and saying what they were grateful for that morning. Well, when it got to me, I wasn't prepared, so I was a little caught off guard. Well, guess what? The next day, driving into that office, you better believe I was thinking, what am I thankful for today? What am I grateful for? So that I would have an answer. And it completely shifted your mindset going into work.
Well, that added because you now have an attitude of gratitude.
Yeah, absolutely. And so it was I just kind of wanted to share that a little bit because that was something that I was really impressed with. And I do feel that it was really, really powerful because, why you are choosing to be a part of this family is something that we have to remember, that nobody's forcing us to be a part of these practices. We get to be in charge and choosing what we're doing, and who doesn't want to be a part of something that's joyful and happy with clear communication and expectations that's effective.
Well, and you're ending on a positive communication,
yes,
which is always fun. I was part of a practice that did minute to win-its. And so they did all of their metrics just like you outlined. And then they did a real quick minute to win it.
Every morning?
Every morning.
Oh my gosh.
It was a lot of fun, actually.
That's actually a really fun way to start the morning off. Everybody's laughing. And so did you win a prize?
No, I was not fast enough. I think it was like pulling all the tissues out of the tissue box.
I didn't mean
and
you.
Well, for me, I was going, why are we wasting all of these tissues out of this tissue box?
That's actually a really good one. But what you say matters less than how consistently you say it. So yes, our words are very, very important, but we have to also be really consistent with it. And that, I feel, aligns with the consistency of what we expect in our morning huddle. And doctors, it starts with you. You need to be there on time for your morning huddles, and you need to lead by example with that. That is an area that I know practices will struggle with in getting team members there on time. And if we all start very consistently at the time that we all agree on, and doctors a part of that, that makes it a lot easier to hold the rest of the team members accountable as well.
Wholeheartedly agree. So we talked a lot about morning huddles and the effective communication and consistency there. Can we shift over a little bit to, I've experienced recently actually at multi-location practice with lots of different team members, different personality styles, split teams that only go to certain locations, and the telephone effect of poor communication.
Oh, you know what? That's actually a brilliant topic. I'm glad you just added that in here, because if you have more than one location, you absolutely need to have an organizational chart, especially if you have multiple team members and it's not one team that shifts together to each location.
And when you talk organizational chart, you're meaning channels of communication.
Yes.
Who does this team member go to
Correct.
for these specific areas of concern.
Because communication in that scenario, or if you have two doctors in a practice and essentially, two strong leaders in a practice, are we providing channels of clear communication so the team members are hearing consistency through messaging, whether it's when a staff meeting is, or if we're going to close the office. I mean, even simple topics like that, let alone the important, decisions and topics or changes that we're going to be making in the practice. But being able to ensure that all of the team members are on board with that information is really important in getting your team members vested as a true part of your family. So yes, the organizational chart we've talked before on visual tools, visual commitments. That should be a visually created organizational chart. That way, doctors as well, this minimizes all the little minutia having to come to you or come across your desk, which is a time suck for you, and we don't recommend. So yes, to be able to have where you've got clinical teams, you've got, channels of accountability and communication that funnel up ultimately to the doctor and the business owner.
And monthly business meetings to bring everybody together. Sometimes when you have practices or teammates that are siloed out to these different locations, bringing them collaboratively together can generate some new ideas, can make efficiencies of the practice different and better, can hammer out some of these challenges with your communication styles, making sure that everybody's on the same page to produce a greater level of efficiency for the business as a whole.
And to add a little bit more to communication, I'm a firm believer in an open door policy, 100%. However, we do have to recognize that there are at times team members that just want a platform to complain and gossip, and they're always going to channel through that. The way that you turn that around with effective communication is to say, thank you so much for bringing that to my attention. Thank you for identifying that opportunity. Remember, we're going to change problems and challenges to opportunities, because now we've shifted from a reactive response to a proactive, positive, solution-based response. So if we can turn it around and say, thank you for identifying this opportunity, what would a potential solution be? I just did this with a coaching session I did, and I've just been hearing constantly on how overworked and understaffed this practice is. And I said, I validate your experience. What would a potential solution be? And it's really interesting how it shifted the dynamic of the conversation.
Does it create and generate some pause, I would presume, with the team members 100%. To go, how am I bringing this? How am I showing up to this conversation?
And, the emotionally intelligent team members will recognize and respond that way. But it does a couple of things. One, it identifies those team members that are, in fact, looking for those positive solution-based responses. But it also identifies those patients that simply want that platform to complain and gossip, and it weeds them out because they stop coming to you. They don't want to be a part of a solution. They don't want you to ask them that question. And so it is twofold in what that accomplishes.
Because they're trying to enable you in that
exactly right.
negative talk.
That's exactly right. So yeah, it can facilitate a lot of interactive communication and, positive solution-based interactions for sure.
So there's been some great points that we've talked about today as far as, collaboration and effective communication. We've given out some pretty strong tools on how to make those very purposeful meetings intentional and how to start that day out positive. I love this conversation.
Yeah, and I want to end it on the ripple effect. The ripple effect, a stone will land in the water and the ripple effect moves outward to every person in that practice. And that can be everything from clear, effective communication to positive energy to accountability. And I do want to leave everybody with that encouragement to recognize the impact that they have in the practice. But that's us wrapping up today's Chairside Chat. We invite you to catch us next time Between Two Molars.
So as a friendly reminder, don't forget to comment, ask questions, like and subscribe to Between Two Molars.
And we'll see you next time.